Okay, let's solve this quadratic equation. We have 3x squared plus 2x plus 11 equals 0. It's probably going to involve complex numbers, and the way to confirm that is with the top part of the quadratic formula. The top part here is the square root part where it says b squared minus 4ac. That's known as with a big word called discriminant. Now that discriminant, if that's less than 0, in other words, if it's a negative number under that house, the square root of a negative number means we're working with complex numbers or imaginary. So you might recall I equals the square root of -1. So whatever's under there, if it's negative, we're going to use imaginary numbers. So let's confirm that. But first, let's take a look at the coefficients where we can label our a, b, and c, which we need to use for the quadratic formula. So our a, the first coefficient of x squared, a equals 3. Our b equals coefficient of x is 2, and the last term c equals 11. Let's put it into the discriminant part. The discriminant is symbolized by the triangle like that, and that equals just the square root sign, b squared minus 4ac. b squared minus 4ac, which equals, let's put in the b squared. The b is 2, so the square root of b squared, which is 2 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 3. 4 times 3 times c, which is 11. Okay, what does that equal? Well, that equals the square root of 2 2s are 4. This will be negative, minus 4 3s are 12. 12 times 11. 12 times 11. 12 times 11, that's going to be 132. All right, that's definitely going to be negative. That equals the square root of 4 minus 132. That's going to be minus negative 128. All right, it's negative. It's involving complex numbers. Now what we're going to do, now that we know we've got to use the quadratic formula, it's going to involve the imaginary numbers. Let's take a, b, c and put it fully in the quadratic formula. So here we go. We go negative b. Now we did that earlier. No, we didn't do that part. Negative b is negative 2. So negative 2 plus or minus the square root of, now we did it before, 2 squared, I'll write it again, 2 squared minus 4 times 3 times 11 all over 2a. 2 times a, and our a is 3. 2 times 3. Okay, let's continue with this, which equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of, now we've already done it, 4 minus 132. 132. Let's create some space here. All over 2 times 3, which is 6. What does that equal? Well, that equals negative 2 plus or minus square root of what we got before, negative 128. Negative 128 all over 6. 2 times 3, 6, so we got to put 6 under there. Let's keep going with this. It's negative 2 plus or minus the square root of what? Now, negative 128, we can break it up into 3 components. Now, we've got a negative component and then 2 numbers where one of them is a square, gives us 128. Now, we know for 128, we can break it up into square root of negative 128, break it up into the square root of negative 1 times the square root of, what times what is 128? Well, 64, that's a perfect square, and 2. 2 times 64 is 128. So these 3 houses, these 3 radicals, will give us negative 128. It's the same. So let's do that. So it's going to be the square root, negative 1, square root of 64, and square root of 2, all over 6. So what's that going to equal? So if we simplify it over here, it's going to be negative 2 plus or minus. Now, the square root of negative 1 is I. So we're going to write an I there. There's our I. And then the square root of 64, well, the square root of 64 is the same as saying 8, right? So that's going to be 8. And then root 2. All over 6. Okay, let's continue to simplify. Now, I'm going to divide top and bottom by 2. So 2 into negative 2 is going to be negative 1. Negative 1 all over. 2 into 6 is 3. Negative 1/3 plus or minus. And we've got 2 into 8 is going to give us 4. So that's going to be 4i, the square root of 2, all over 2 into 6 is 3 again. All right, so we're going to have two answers, plus or minus. Negative 1/3 plus or minus 4i root 2 over 3. 4i root 2 over 3. So, now some people write it 4 root 2i. It doesn't matter, it's still the same thing. We're going to have two answers. One is going to be x is equal to negative 1/3 plus, let's put a plus there, 4 root I root 2 all over 3. That's one solution. And the other one is equal to negative 1/3 minus 4i on 3. So there's our two solutions. So x equals negative 1/3 plus 4i root 2 on 3, and x equals negative 1/3 minus 4i root 2 on 3.